Greetings, citizen. In this tutorial I will talk about keyboard turning, mouse clicking, and why these are a problem. I will then outline solutions to this problem. We'll first start by discussing what keyboard turning and mouse clicking is. If you have the default user interface, your primary character movement keys are bound to W, A, S, and D. You'll use W to advance, and S to backpedal, and your A and D keys to turn. This means using the keyboard to turn your character around, and, excuse me sir, that what is meant by being a keyboard turner. For mouse clicking, this means that you use your mouse to select the spells or abilities that your character has by clicking on them, as I'm doing now. You can click and hold the left mouse button to change the camera direction. By default, it will snap back behind your character when you let go. You can use the right mouse button to turn your character facing, and by default this will also adjust the camera. If you hold both buttons down, your character will start moving forward. Players just starting out quickly learn that if they're using the mouse to click these buttons, then they can't really use the mouse to turn the character around, so they just use the keys to turn the character instead. This is comfortable and easy to use. Let's talk about why it's a problem. There are a few issues with using the mouse to click your actions. The most important one is that you have to actively track where your mouse cursor is to make sure you're clicking the right button. That means your eyes are down here and you're missing everything that's happening up here. The second major issue is that if you're using your mouse to click the buttons down here, then you're not able to use it to turn the camera. Freeing the camera from your character and your actions will enable you to execute critical maneuvers in raids, such as jump shots, kiting, arbitrary turns, and circle strafing targets, such as what I'm going to do with this combat dummy here. To do this, I have to hold the right mouse button down and occasionally tap the left one as well. I simply can't be clicking buttons down in my action bar if I'm circle strafing my target. This means players often make the choice not to do these maneuvers and simply to click the buttons down here. Finally, having to drag your mouse from button to button takes time and precision. You might misclick or miss a global cooldown because you couldn't place the mouse on the button quickly enough. Probably you have practiced your combat rotation on a target dummy at some point. This is a good start, but a target dummy doesn't move and doesn't give you any reason to move. Enemies will usually run straight towards you or stand still and cast. You just stand there and trade shots until one of you dies. In raids, battlegrounds, dungeons, and even some world quests, enemies will often move around, and you'll also have to move around, either to keep fighting them or to avoid dangerous attacks. It's one thing to have a perfect rotation on a combat dummy, it's quite another to have a perfect rotation in a raid or battleground environment. The default user interface encourages tunnel vision, focusing only on what you are doing. In raids, tunnel vision and a lack of focus will get you and other players killed. You will also need a high degree of mobility that is impossible while relying entirely on the keyboard to move around. These things sound trivial, but in a raid context they're critical. World of Warcraft is about lots of small things adding up to become a big thing. Switching from keyboard turning and clicking to mouse look and shortcut keys is one of the biggest things you can do to improve your World of Warcraft experience. You might already be familiar with shortcut keys. Shortcut keys are faster than clicking with your mouse because it doesn't matter where your ability is on your screen, it can be mapped to anyone on your keyboard. Also, you don't need to actively track your mouse location. You can keep your eyes on the screen and look at all the action happening up here while your fingers do all the work. For example, I'm going to execute my basic rotation using only the keybinds here. You can see my mouse is free to do what I want over here. I can also look around behind me while I'm fighting to get a better idea of what baddies or horde might be sneaking up on me, and I can basically maintain my entire rotation without having to click any of the buttons down there. I'm also not missing any global cooldowns because, as you can see, I'm clicking the button repeatedly. If I keep clicking it like so, the instant it becomes available, I'm able to do the ability right away. Shortcut keys are flat out superior to clicking with the mouse. Anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is trying to sell you something. We'll eventually use an add-on called Bartender 4 to manage our shortcut keys. For now though, I'll use the in-game interface. Press Escape, select Key Bindings, select Action Bar. You can see here the key bindings I have currently set correspond to the buttons down here. Shift W, Shift A, 1, 2, 3, R, F, Shift R, Control R, and the last two are empty. The additional pages you've got here refer to other action bars around the screen. I don't encourage you to experiment at this stage because I will train you how to use an add-on that will make this process much easier. The point here though is I want you to start having your primary rotation down here mapped to keybinds so that you can practice against this target dummy. Let's see. For my character, my core rotation abilities are Avenger's Shield, which I've bound to 1. Judgment, which is bound to R. Consecration, which is bound to 3. And Shield of the Righteous, which is bound to F. You can see I'm pressing all these buttons quite happily. Now that my core rotation is bound to these buttons, I can entirely execute my rotation using just the keyboard. For now, I still need to look down here to see what abilities are off cooldown so that I can use them. Another video in the Raider 101 series will teach you how to move your action bars up here so that your eyes don't need to go far. But for now, here's a user interface I prepared earlier. Since I'm using the keyboard to control my actions, my mouse is now free to control the camera, which it is much more suited to do. The keyboard turns your character at a set turning speed, whereas the mouse can turn your character in any arbitrary direction. In fact, we'll use the mouse to turn your character from now on. Using a mouse to turn the character is exactly what you do in a first-person shooter, and those games also have your strafe keys bound to A and D. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go Escape, Key Bindings, Movement Keys. Let's change strafe left to A and strafe right to D. Okay, return to game. Now my character strafes. It turns out that a lot of first-person shooter moves, such as circle strafing, jump shots, and kiting, become accessible with this setup. We'll talk more about what these are useful for in another tutorial. Now, you can turn your camera independently to how your character is facing using the left mouse button, but your camera is likely locked to your character and will automatically recenter after you release or after you start moving. If so, go to Interface, Camera, change the Always Adjust Camera to Never Adjust Camera, make sure water collision is checked off, otherwise your camera will not go below the water, which you'll find annoying. Return to game. Now when I turn the camera around and let go, and even if I'm moving around, the camera stays in the position that I've set it to. In some boss encounters, you may need to look in behind you to be able to see what's happening while you're fighting, or perhaps you have to stand next to a wall and the default camera behavior isn't helpful for you. You need to become comfortable using the mouse to both turn your camera independently of where your character is facing. You may have noticed that you can move the camera in and out using the scroll wheel on your mouse. You can adjust the distance the camera is allowed to scroll in and out by entering a command into your chat window. The default distance is 1. You can make this as large and small as you like, although in practice it seems any number larger than 2.6 is truncated to 2.6. Being able to zoom out further will allow you to have a greater understanding of the area around you. In particular, when you are in a crowded area with lots of players and spells around you, you may have to find it useful to zoom out and look down on top of your character like this. Of course, sometimes the environment will get in the way. That's why it's important to become comfortable to be able to adjust your camera quickly and easily so that a momentary distraction doesn't become a fatal mistake. You are now armed with the basic knowledge on how to go out and cause some trouble. Your homework for this tutorial is basically to become familiar with some shortcut keys. Don't worry about memorizing all of your keybinds yet. In the next video, I'll be teaching you how to use a tool that makes setting up your keybinds and actions very easy. For now, I just want you to become familiar with the basic concepts of using shortcut keys and your mouse to turn around. Here are the steps you should take to get set up. 1. Set up your strafe keys, A and D. Make sure that your camera is unlocked, and set the camera view max zoom distance to value you like using the /console camera distance max zoom factor 2.6 command, which I'll put in the link of this video. Set up your core rotation on a few keybinds. 5 or 6 keys should be enough. Practice your core rotation using only your shortcut keys on a combat dummy until you're comfortable with it, then add in a few defensive or damage boost abilities. Then, maybe journey out into the world and knock out a few daily quests. Then lastly, mount up and practice doing a few 180-degree turns in mid-air. Then, when you need the hang of it, practice doing 180-degree turns one way and then the other before you land. This basic skill is fundamental to jump shots, snapshots and kiting. Once you're feeling comfortable, try throwing through a few instant cast attacks while you're in mid-air. Start by facing away from the target dummy, jump, and turn the camera to face the target. Attack while you're in mid-air, and land facing the other direction. Eventually your goal is to be able to perform these attacks while you're moving. You need to be able to face the target and snap off an attack at any given moment. Otherwise, every time you're not attacking, you're wasting time that could be doing damage to the enemy. For channeled casts, you need to be facing your target at the start of the cast and at the end of the cast. Once you're comfortable with the new you, it's time to move on to the next lesson, Bartender 4, Action Bars and Shortcut Keys. I'll be looking forward to seeing you in a future raid. Good luck and good hunting.
Kingdom of Malik.